Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me today. My name is Mireya Hawthorne, and our company is MG Risk Advisors, or MGRA. We are located downtown in the DFW Metroplex, but we can help individuals and companies like yourself across the country. We are a risk management organization that will help you purchase insurance. Policies you may have heard of, things like business owners policies or medical malpractice. Now, some of you may still be in school or opening up a practice, joining or leaving a group for another. All of those things open up the doors for us to discuss or how you're going to handle or manage your risks. Now, the goal at the end of the day is to take it off your balance sheet or out of your own pocketbook and transfer it onto an insurance carrier. And all of this can be done. They just charge fees for it, and they call those things premiums. And that's what I'm here to help you do. We will help you get the most comprehensive policies out there for the lowest fees available. Now, sometimes they're not the absolute lowest, but you get what you pay for, and we're going to help you navigate what's going to be best for you. Now, you're going to ask yourself, do I need this? When do I need it? What exactly is it? And the answer is yes, you are going to need it. If not today, eventually throughout your career, that is something that that's going to come up. Now, when do you need it? Some of those examples that I cited, if you're going to be opening up a practice, leaving or joining a group, it's going to conjure up the opportunity to review it and discuss what exactly it is that you need. So I separated the types of policies that you're going to need into two separate columns. One is property and casualty, and the other one is the executive coverages. Property and casualty insurance is your business owner's policies, and it is something called, it includes these next items in the left-hand column. Now, it's not all inclusive. This is just a little synopsis of some of the things that you may need. General liability, business personal property, commercial auto, workers' compensation. Now, this is for your third-party negligence. This is for people that could sue you for things, for reasons that they feel like you hurt them, the services that you did hurt them. On the right side, now that's going to be the coverages for the executives, the business owners, to protect you as an owner. And this is going to be your coverages like medical malpractice, directors and officers liability, employment practice liability, crime fiduciary, and cyber. Now, when you think about these policies, no matter what column you're in, I want you to take the position that at the end of the day, you are buying defense. Now, under a business owner's policy, that's really made up of two different parts. One is general liability and business personal property. General liability is exactly what it sounds like. It's liability in general. This is, in fact, you are deemed negligent. So these are going to be things like slip and falls. A patient comes into your physician's office, your medical office, and they slip and fall and hurt themselves. That's one of the most common things. And then your business personal property, which is your furniture, fixtures, high-end medical equipment, and also something called tenant improvements. So it's going to be things like your finish out or your build out of your offices. It's going to be your partitions, the walls in between, your patient offices, patient rooms, that is, things like that. Now, to give you an idea, there's about 5,500 fires in healthcare facilities per year. So it's a big deal. So if your things burn in a fire, it leads us into the next coverage, which is business income and extra expense. Now, if you can't open up for business, you're going to lose some business income. You may have to move across the street, and that's going to be some extra expense for you. So losing revenue or business interruption is what that coverage is. Things like your daily income loss from scheduled or unscheduled appointments, that's a big deal to you. That's where you're making your money. There's something called data breach on these policies that you can purchase. And that's if you have a personal identification compromised, a software breach. It pays for the response expense along with legal costs and income protection. Another big piece under your business owner's policy could be a spoilage coverage. Now, that is for your perishable medicines. So if you have to replace the medicines due to a temperature change, failure of heating or cooling, contamination through by a refrigerant, that's what this portion of the policy will help you pay for that and get things replaced. Now, to get into a little bit more detail on your commercial auto or hired non-owned. Now, commercial owned autos are going to be automobiles or vehicles that are owned in the company name. These can be like mobile X-ray vehicles. And then the hired non-owned or hired automobile liability, that's for the vehicles that you don't own. So these could be cars that your staff is using, and it's their own personal vehicles. So the company itself doesn't own them. And this coverage will cover bodily injury and property damage caused by a vehicle that you own or that you hire or that you borrow. And if they get into a car wreck and it's with the staff's automobile, their personal insurance will respond first, and then yours will sit excess over it. So if they're going into, if they end up having an accident while on the job, that could conjure up another policy that could be triggered, and that's called workers' compensation. Now in Texas, there's another policy called occupational accident, but we're only going to talk about workers' compensation today. And this covers employees that are injured in the course of their employment. So while they're on the job and they get hurt. And these can be things like, that's very common in your vertical, which is going to be like needle sticks. With a needle stick, an employee could get an occupational disease like hepatitis, or if it's in the administrative staff, they can get carpal tunnel. And what workers' compensation does, it relinquishes the employee's right to sue you, and it will pay for their medical and some lost wages for the employee for all the work-related injuries or illnesses. Now I'm going to jump over into the executive coverages. And this is on what we call a claims-made form. All that means to you and makes things real important for you is if who is on the insurance at the time the claim is made, as opposed to the business owner's policy that we just spoke about, that's on an occurrence form. And that's when it doesn't matter who's on the insurance at the time of the loss, it's when did the service occur? That's going to be the carrier that responds. All right. So under the claims made form, under the executive coverages, it's going to be when the claim is actually made. So things like your retroactive date becomes very, very important, especially when you're leaving jobs and going in between groups. And now remember, a private practice insurance policy is the best way to make sure you're protected from lawsuit damages and attorney's fees. Now, medical malpractice, I'm going to get into much more detail in just a moment. So I'm going to skip on down to directors and officers liability. Now, directors and officers insurance is for you as a business owner and for the medical providers, and it focuses on the type of claims that are raised against you as professionals, like HIPAA violation claims, emergency medical treatment claims, peer review, credentialing, or investor lawsuits. So that's a really big deal if you're joining a board. And you want to make sure if you're being protected as an individual, but also as a board member. The next piece is employment practice liability. I'm sure you've heard of these. This is like one of the #1 claims in the top 3 of what surfaces throughout the years. And this provides coverages if you're sued by an employee for things like discrimination, sexual harassment, wrongful termination, hostile work environment. That's just scratching the surface of some of the things that they can sue you for. And we want to make sure that you have the coverage. The next piece is crime fiduciary. So you as a business owner are going to be responsible. Let's say you're offering your employees a 401k or health insurance, and you fail to provide them or add them to the policy. Or let's say you thought you added them to the policy, and for some reason the carrier didn't do so on their end, and nobody knows until there's a claim. The crime fiduciary portion is what's going to help you in this. Under the crime, it's mainly the fiduciary. Under the crime, that's going to be for employee theft, employee fraud, things like that. Now, the last piece is under cyber. Now, this covers losses and damages resulting from patient data being stolen or exposed, held for ransom, it happens, information being improperly shared, deliberate actions like hacking or ransomware, as well as accidents is that, you know, if somebody leaves a laptop and there's information containing PID on patients, or there's a coding error and exposing the patient data, all that can be covered under cyber. So let's get a little bit deeper into medical malpractice. Now, dermatologists are considered very low risk. All that means is that you're sued less often, so that leads to lower rates. That's good news for you compared to, let's say, a neurosurgeon. Now, claims don't always lead to court cases, but 100% of the time, they do lead to stress. Now, how do you avoid a claim? Well, I'm going to tell you, you need to start at the practice level. You want to have thorough, informed consent. I mean, robust documentation. And one of the most important things you need to have is a caring and honest communication style with the patients. Just like on employment practice liability and even workers' compensation, where their employees would sue you, in this case, this would be a patient, you can almost cause them to want to sue you for lack of empathy or feeling like they do not matter. You need to make sure that they have the feeling that they're being heard and that they do matter and their situation is important. So I do very much implore that you give them that type of attention so that they don't sue you. Now, if in fact these do lead to a court case, this type of coverage will protect you and pay for your monetary damages to the plaintiff and to all the attorney's fees. So this is a very important piece. Now, all physicians are at risk for medical malpractice, and dermatologists obviously are not immune. Dermatologists tend to be sued for errors in procedure, misdiagnosis, including claims related to operative procedures on the skin, melanoma, acne, psoriasis, things like that. Now, during COVID, this is where telemedicine has really come into play. And a lot of the insurance carriers thought that telemedicine would diminish or go away, but it hasn't. In fact, it has grown. Now, what exactly is telemedicine? Telemedicine is delivering medical services via exactly what it sounds like: telephones, video calls, encrypted tools. Most telemedicine appointments consist of doctor consulting with the patient over devices, then diagnosing and prescribing treatments. Risks include physicians knowing when to have the patient come in to avoid a misdiagnosis, and that in itself increases in cyber liability, increases the risk for cyber liability with the use of those devices because of privacy issues or not being HIPAA compliant. So 3 questions you should really ask yourself is, what kind of coverage do I have? What are my liability limits? And do I need additional coverage? Well, what kind of coverage do I have? Well, is it claims made or occurrence based? Those type of things do matter. So ask yourself that, or ask the organization you're joining, what kind of forms are there? What are my liability limits? If you're in a risk retention group or a self-insured program, they may have different limits than what Texas licensed insurers offer, and you want to make sure you're compliant. You should also determine whether or not you're covered by a policy with your own set of limits, or if you're sharing a silo of coverage with the employer and all the other employees and doctors. And you want to know for sure what your self-insured retention is, what you're responsible for out of pocket before the insurance will drop down and start covering you. Now, do you need additional coverage? If you're changing jobs, the answer is yes, you most likely do. There's something called tail or nose coverage that's needed to ensure that you're protected from lawsuits for acts that are done years ago or yesterday, the day before you left the practice and joined another. Policies should always be retroactive, meaning that the effective date is the first day of employment of your former employer. You want to make sure that you have that date as far back as possible to pick up any of those losses. Again, my name is Mireya Hawthorne, and my email is mireya@mgrainc.com, phone number 972-720-0700. Now, you may have a lot more questions, and if so, please submit them to me, as I will be available on the 21st with the rest of the panel, and we'll be able to address them. I look forward to working with you in the future.